Good morning, I'm Kevin Chisnell with VDOT, and this morning we're going to talk about surface treatments, or chip seals, their components and design, and the placement of surface treatments. In Chapter 2, we'll talk about the materials and design of the treatment. In this chapter, you'll be able to identify the materials used in surface treatment and understand the surface treatment design process. The materials that are used in surface treatment are emulsions and aggregates, and the cationic rapid set, or CRS emulsion, is the most commonly used emulsion in Virginia. Also used is a CRS2L. These emulsions have proven to be very durable and long-lasting and give good aggregate retention of the treatment. The emulsions for surface treatment are made up of a liquid-based asphalt, usually a PG58 or 64, and about 65% water, which is important, we'll talk about later, and emulsifying additives, which are soap type of material. These emulsions are temperature sensitive, and it's very important that they be kept at temperature. If the temperature of the emulsion, even in storage, drops below 100, the asphalt may separate from the water. And the closer we get to 212, the water may boil off of the treatment. The temperature range during application of a surface treatment for a CRS2 is 160 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit. We talked about cationic rapid set. The aggregates for surface treatments, or aggregates in general, have a negative surface charge. Cationic emulsions have a positive surface charge. They can formulate these emulsions to have a more rapid or medium or slow set, and for surface treatments we'll use a rapid set cationic emulsion. These emulsions should adhere to the aggregate, they should cure rapidly, and the base asphalt binder can be viscous and it will resist runoff. CRS2 has to meet Type 2 coating ability in the VDOT Road and Bridge Spec Section 210.02. And the contractor is responsible for assuring that, or ensuring that the aggregate and the emulsion are compatible. They run a Virginia test method VTM 65 prior to the placement of the treatment and submit those results to VDOT. I talked earlier about the 65% water in the emulsion, or approximately 65%, and here's what it does. When the aggregates are dropped on the freshly sprayed emulsion, as shown here, the volume of the emulsion is high, and then there is what is called a break, and in the break is when the water starts to evaporate or dissipate from the material, and wherever the emulsion is in contact with the stone, it will stick to it. So the bond is better because of the water, and there are voids in between these aggregates which makes it so the tires won't pick up the aggregate. That's called film collapse. Now we'll talk about aggregates. Aggregates are simply rocks, and the aggregates that we use for surface treatments in Virginia, the coarse aggregate is generally an 8P. The shape is cubical, and it should be clean and free of dust. The aggregate material for surface treatments should be in saturated surface dry condition, which means that the particle itself should be saturated with water, but the surface should be either damp or dry. The aggregates for surface treatment are required to have a clean surface, but they must be stockpiled for 24 hours after washing. Strong bonding to the emulsion provides the strength and durability of a surface treatment. Softer aggregates may crush under the rollers, and when that happens, they can be submerged into the treatment, the volume of the emulsion rises, and you have a bleeding or flushed roadway with asphalt. That does a couple of things. It lowers the skid resistance especially, and can become a dangerous situation. The fine aggregate for surface treatment for a modified single seal is either natural sand or manufactured sand. A lot of times we use a number 9, which is a manufactured aggregate with the fines taken out of it. It's very important that these fines have a minus 200 percentage of less than a 1.5. 1.5 is very desirable. And the specs for coarse and fine aggregate, as you see here for the sieve analysis, and probably the most important one is on the number 9, the number 50, 5% passing the number 50. And that's so we have a cleaner aggregate and we don't have a dust problem. Talking about design, the targets for achievement are to have enough emulsion on the roadway that it doesn't flush or bleed, and enough to hold the stone, and then have an aggregate spread of one stone, one layer thick, across the whole roadway. That's the design achievement target. The contractor designs surface treatments to VTM, Virginia Test Method 66, which is directly related to the Asphalt Institute's MS-19, the manual series on emulsions. And in this design, it takes a lot of things into consideration, including the aggregate shape, the particle size, all those things. And it's designed to those parameters of enough emulsion to hold the road, to hold the stone to the road but not bleed up through, and stone thickness, one layer in thickness. So talking about seals, this is an example of a single seal where 0.3 of a gallon per square yard of asphalt emulsion is sprayed onto the roadway, and that's followed by 15 to 20 pounds of cover aggregate on top of it. And then that's rolled. The rolling will happen immediately after the placement of the aggregate. And here's a shot showing that single seal treatment. And it's very freshly sprayed. The volume drop hasn't happened yet. You can see some emulsion, some free emulsion there. But that's, in a nutshell, what it looks like for a single seal. The most commonly used surface treatment in Virginia now is a type B blotted seal. And it's very similar to a single seal, except that instead of 0.3 of a gallon per square yard, the first shot we only put 0.17 of a gallon per square yard. And then we cover that with number 8 aggregates. That is rolled. And then that's followed by about 0.15 of a gallon per square yard on top of those coarse aggregates. And then that manufactured or natural sand, that clean sand, is put on top of that. What happens there is those sand particles actually lock in those coarse aggregate particles. And we don't have the problem with whip-off of the coarse particles. And here's what that looks like. And you can actually see where those fine particles are in between the coarse aggregates and lock it in place. And that's cured at that's probably a day old in that photograph. So we'll have a knowledge check now. And in your book, number 1 says the recommended asphalt emulsion grades for surface treatment are CRS2L, CRS2, RC250, or A and B. And the correct answer is D, A, and B. Number 2 says the compatibility, shape, hardness, and blank of the aggregate shall be used in surface treatment job to help determine its effectiveness. Is that color, surface texture, cleanliness, or none of the above? It's C, cleanliness. And number 3, soft aggregate used in surface treatment adheres better and will result in a stronger pavement. And that answer is B, false. A softer aggregate will probably break under the roller and should not be used. In closing chapter 2, you have seen the materials for surface treatments and the design of surface treatments, and we will cover chapter 3 next.